Hey y'all, welcome back to Blackmore Barbecue. Today, I'm doing something a little different. I'm going to do a review of one of my favorite knives, this Dalstrong Omega Kiritsuke. We're going to review one of my favorite knives, my Dalstrong Omega 8.5 inch kiritsuke. I think I said that right. So this is my Dalstrong Omega 8.5 inch kiritsuke. I got this over a year ago, and this is probably the first nice knife. This is the first over $100 knife I ever purchased for myself. It comes with this nice little stand. It comes with this awesome sheath as well. Something that's very nice, especially because I've bought more expensive knives that didn't come with this stuff. This is their liquid metal. It's supposed to help the food slide off when you're slicing. I think it does an okay job. It's mostly there to look cool. It's kind of similar to Damascus, you know, you're not really paying for a whole lot of functionality. You're paying for a forging technique and the look of the knife. I think it looks cool. That's why it comes in this stand, because this is a presentation piece when you buy it. You know, you're going to leave this out, people are going to pick it up, they're going to look at it, they're going to admire it. One thing to note about the stand, especially when you have people coming over and admiring your knife, you have to be careful because they will jam this in here, and the knife is sharp enough out of the box, and if you maintain it correctly, that it will gouge this little wood right here on the holder. So that's just something to keep in mind. This is how I have it displayed proudly at my house. It's a great knife. Let's get into the details. Like I said, I've had this knife for a year, a little over a year now. I really like this knife. It's not my workhorse knife. It's probably my third knife in rotation because it is such a good looking knife. I don't use it for lots of heavy duty prep. I use it for lots of slicing and vegetable stuff, but I'm not breaking down anything with bones with this knife. It's a pretty thin blade and a very fine tip, so I try to be careful of that. The knife is handle heavy. It is full tang. It naturally fits very well on a pinch grip. With kiritsukes and gyotos in general, they have a very flat profile, right? So not gonna be very good for rocking. This has a little bit of a rock to it, a little bit of a belly, not very pronounced, nothing like you're gonna see on a German steel knife. And I like that. My kind of natural cutting motion tends to be more of this push cut, right? I really like this actually. And I think if we're gonna be technical, I think this is more of a Gyoto profile with what's called a K-tip. The kiritsuke, I think in the traditional sense, is gonna be a little taller and flatter. The things that gives it that kiritsuke name or whatever is this little tip right here, this sword tip. And it's very similar, you know, lots of websites will advertise how it's the same forging and metallurgy that went into forging katanas and stuff, and that's kind of where it comes from. How realistic that is, I'm not sure, but it does look cool, and I love this tip for doing fine work, especially like garlic, slicing meat, fish. I really like it. It's also, you'll find something like that on a bunka as well. Something I'm looking to add to my collection soon. Even though this is a very hard knife, and we'll get into the specifics here in a minute, but it's very it's reactive when you hit it on the board. It feels good when you're cutting. It doesn't wedge when it's going through vegetables. It's just something to note, right? I don't really know how to explain it much better than that, but it feels good. It feels reactive in the hand. For being a hard metal, you know, this is a special metal that's heat treated to 63 Rockwell hardness. There's actually a little bit of flexibility in this tip. Like I said, this is an 8.5 inch blade. It's made out of BD1N VX Hypersteel, right? Dalstrong has a good little excerpt on their website talking about this, what the steel is, which I like. It's heat treated to a 63 hardness, which is pretty hard. It's a high carbon chromium steel. Carbon is good in knives, right? Carbon steel knives are great. They're just hard to maintain. They're not hard, but they do take more work to maintain, right? No big deal. Carbon's hard. It's easy to get sharp. It takes an edge. It has decent edge retention. The N in BD1N stands for nitrogen. The nitrogen in this blade gives the metal hardness, toughness, and surprising flexibility. Again, not a metallurgist, not an expert. I don't know how true that is. I have one other knife with a high amount of nitrogen in the metal composition, and that knife also has great edge retention. It's very easy to sharpen, and it holds an edge. So this metal is heat treated to a Rockwell hardness of 63. That's pretty damn good. Or most high-end Japanese knives, you're gonna wanna be 62 plus, right? I like this BD1 in metal mostly because it sounds like a droid from Star Wars, and also because it's American-made metal, so I can be all hoorah America, hell yeah, buddy. But in all seriousness, you know, this knife works very well. It's very reactive. I've had it for over a year. It's very sharp, and I've only sharpened it twice. I've maintained it with honing and some stropping on a leather strop and maybe a high grit whetstone, but I've only sharpened this knife twice, using it every week, 3 to 4 times a week, right? Again, I'm not cutting up mushrooms, I'm not doing heavy prep with this knife, but it's getting a fair amount of use, probably comparable to what most regular home cooks are getting, right? The handle is made out of G10. It's like a composite material, looks like wood. It's very nice, very smooth, pretty resistant. My only gripe about this handle is it's heavy, which I like. I'm a very big guy, I've got big hands. This is a very thin knife, so I like to have a little weight in the handle, right? I just wish it was a little longer, or I wish it was a wah handle. I'm a big fan of the wah handle, which is something like this. This is a wah handle. It's the octagonal. It fits in the hand very comfortably. I like that it's much longer. It gives me more control, right? This is still very comfortable, and it's a nice heavy handle, which I like. I just wish it was a little bigger, right? I'm never holding the handle like this. I'm holding it in the pinch grip. I just wish it was a little bigger. Again, that's a me thing. It's probably not an issue for most people, so let's see how it holds up. So let's do a quick edge retention sharpness test. It's probably been at least 3-4 months since I sharpened this. I'm honing it on a steel rod. I've stropped it a couple of times here or there. And I've been using this, I've actually used this knife a lot the last 2 weeks. And I think it's about time for a new sharpening. I could tell it's not wedging, but it's just not lasering through vegetables, right? But let's test the sharpness right now. This is just magazine paper, right? Okay, feels good. There's a little tearing. When we go on the slice, very clean, right? Go for the push cut. It's not quite, on the push cut, it's ripping a little bit, right? So it's pretty sharp. Great edge retention, but I'm gonna go ahead and sharpen this. Let's see how sharp we can get it. Then I'm gonna do a ton of vegetable prep. My sister just gave birth. We're going to see the baby here tomorrow. So I'm gonna do a whole bunch of prep, make a bunch of food that they can jar or freeze just to make life a little easier. So we're gonna give it a workout today. All right, so this is a 1000 grit whetstone. I'm not amazing at sharpening knives. Taught myself how to do it on YouTube, but plan is to just do a 1000 grit whetstone until we've got a nice burr on each side. And then we'll strop, deburr, then we'll go up to a 3000 grit and we'll go from there. Before we go down the sharpening rabbit hole and all the different cut tests and vegetable prep, I'm gonna include my final thoughts and conclusions after this clip. You can still go through and watch all that other stuff, but I want you to be able to get this information without having to watch the whole video. Okay guys, still got a little more work to do, but I wanna get the filming done with. We just ran through 4 pounds of onions, celery, cucumbers, carrots, whatever, right? This knife handled it very well. It's very sharp. We did just sharpen it, but it does hold an edge. You know, here's a fresh piece of paper. Here, we'll turn it onto the side and tear it out. The knife holds an edge. Again, this was just an hour and a half worth of work, but I'm very impressed with this knife at 150, 160 bucks. I think it basically will do everything it's advertised to, right? It's a pretty hard knife. It does have some flex to it. It's not the sharpest knife you'll ever have. It's not the sharpest knife out there. It's not the highest quality metal out there. It's not the most traditional knife out there, whatever, right? It's a Japanese style knife. It's combining a gyuto and a kiritsuke, right? Again, trying to pronounce this as correctly as possible, but it's stainless steel, so it's pretty low maintenance. You know, it's hard, it's sharp, it holds an edge. It's sharpened at a pretty acute angle, so that's good. Overall, for 160 bucks, I think this is a great knife. It fills a lot of roles. It's a presentation piece. It's good for slicing. You can do prep work with it. You can cut through vegetables. I just would avoid bones. Although this does flexible, I'm not going to use this like a cleaver, right? It's not my main workhorse knife. It's like a second or third place for that. I still use it to do workhorse things, but you know, it's just a beautiful knife. I really enjoy using it, and you know, a year in, sharpened it 3 times now. Can't beat that, man. This is a very high performing knife. It's advertised. It pretty much does everything it's advertised for. And so to me, that says a lot about the knife. It says a lot about Dalstrong, because there's a lot of knife brands out there that will throw around a lot of buzzwords or hide information and use deceptive marketing tactics. And you know, you really don't know what you're getting. With this knife, you're pretty much getting exactly what you're paying for and what's on the site, you know. There are much more expensive knives that will perform worse than this. There are more expensive knives that will perform better than this, but this pretty much fits in pretty much any kitchen. It fills a very general role, and you know, I really enjoy it. So that's my recommendation. That's my review of this knife. I am not an expert at sharpening by any means, but everything I did, I pretty much ripped off from Ricky Tran at Burrfection. He has a great YouTube channel, and I highly suggest you check it out if you want to learn more about this subject. My strategy when sharpening knives is basically to do the blade in sections. So I'm doing 3 to 5 passes at every section of the blade, working my fingers down with very light pressure. I'm starting to feel a little bit burr, especially down here. It's not fully on the full knife, so we'll keep going. I also forgot to talk about my impromptu setup, right? I don't have a professional setup. I'd like to get one, but this is essentially what we're working with. This is a soaking stone as well, so I've been soaking it in water, but I do like to keep it wet throughout the process. We're going to continue this first stage of sharpening until we can feel that burr forming along the whole length of the blade. For those of you that don't know, the burr is going to be little bits of metal that fold over the blade away from the side you're sharpening. We're having much less metal getting taken off in those initial passes. That kind of lets me know that I think we've formed a burr, right? The black stuff you'll see on the whetstone is the metal pilings getting taken off. One thing that really messed me up when I started sharpening myself, there we go. That's a good burr formed all the way across. Maybe a little bit right here at the tip. Is I was sharpening and then feeling for the burr on the wrong side of the knife, you know? It's like how much of a dumbass could you be? But the burr's gonna form on the opposite side of the knife. So I remember my first time whetstone sharpening, I sharpened that thing forever before I realized that I wasn't feeling for the burr on the right side of the knife. It's still sharp. Just nicked myself right there grabbing the knife. Very shallow cut. It's not even gonna bleed, just kind of broke the skin a little bit. Huh. All right, we're bandaged up now. We've got the burr formed on this side. Now we're gonna do the opposite side. It's important to note that when you're sharpening the opposite side of the knife, you have 2 options. You can either switch to your left hand and maintain the same strategies you did with your main dominant hand. I don't like to do that. I'm very much right hand dominant, so you have to change your angle with the knife so that you're always pushing away. That way you're not cutting into your whetstone. I find this usually makes me have to go for a much more linear profile when sharpening, but that's fine. It gets good results. Again, by no means am I a master. This is just how I found it works best for me. A little more burr down here. Got a pretty consistent burr, a couple more passes, I think. And I'm just kind of doing three strokes in each spot on the blade. That's one pass. Yep, we have a good burr formed on both sides. Now we're going to deburr, still on the 1000 grit. Deburring is all about taking those folded over lips of metal and forming them back into a solid point. We're doing this using long, slow strokes. 10, then we flip, and we go the other way. I like to do 10, 10, 8, 8, 6, 6, and a pyramid down. This usually gives me best results. 10, 10. Once we get under 2, I like to do several alternating passes to smooth things out. You run your fingers up both sides of the blade. Shouldn't feel a burr now. Ooh, feels pretty sharp. So from right here, if you're just doing kind of typical maintenance and you're a professional chef, you sharpen your knives once a week, you can pretty much stop right there and go to stropping. I'm going to go to a higher grit whetstone since I don't sharpen as often. This is just with a 1000 grit whetstone, see where we're at. Already feels sharper, feels smoother, less tearing. Our push cuts feel good. Let me just clean this one a little bit. Here I'm just using a rust eraser to kind of pull off some of those metal filings that get stuck on the whetstone. It's important to keep a clean whetstone whenever possible. Oh my God, I squirted on myself, the water. Not, get your mind out of the gutter. All right, so right here we've had this whetstone soaking. This is the 3000 grit side. Now we're gonna pick up right where we left off and just continue stropping. Or, well, it's kind of stropping, it's also deburring. Ten, 6. Man, it's really starting to glide. Can you? As you can tell, I maintain composure at all times and work in a very professional manner. It is really starting to glide. It's a good sign. 4. That feels really good. It's gliding across the whetstone. I'm gonna go ahead, clean this off. We'll strop. Then we'll do some cut testing, then we'll get into prep work. This is my strop, this is my leather strop. You can see it's got some cuts in it where I was trying to figure out what I was doing. But we're gonna go with, oh shit, that was backwards. We're gonna go with edge trailing strokes. Very slow. And we're just kind of doing the same thing, right? Same angle, almost no pressure. I'm going very slow because I've cut this damn leather too many times. As far as I can tell, using a leather strop is pretty much the industry standard best way to strop your knife. The leather is supposedly supposed to take off any micro burrs, collect any metal shavings. Honestly, I don't know how well it works, but I'm trying my best. Okay. I don't remember how many passes that was, but yeah, that's a sharp knife. All right, let me zoom this bad boy out. All right. Initial cut test paper. God, did you just hear that noise? You can tell when paper's ripping and when it's just getting lasered through, right? All right, that's enough paper mache. The knife is sharp, right? Sounds good. Let's see how it performs on some vegetables. Let's start out with the classic, the tomato. And so the point of this is basically you put the tomato down and without touching it, just the knife, you try to shave as small as a piece of you can. That's pretty good. Pretty thin. Honestly, it might be operator error. On my part, keeping the angle the same. But when you can push cut an overripe tomato, your knife is pretty sharp. Now we'll do the carrot. But I forget what this is called. A brunoise, I think. Just like a really pretentious way of cutting up a carrot. I guess that's still rounded. You basically just plank it. The most important test for me, can it handle an onion like a laser? Because onion is the thing I cut up the most, right? All right. Yeah, that feels really good. Just kind of gliding through there. Do the cross cut. Didn't quite get through this end piece, but that's okay. Again, this is where this kind of K-tip really shines, right? It really allows you to have precision and run through these cuts. And we're going to go into power prep mode, and I'll talk to you again once I'm done. In review, the tomato cut test, pretty well. Could have been some operator error, but the knife glides through, and like I said, anytime you can push cut a tomato, that's a pretty sharp knife. The carrot, it's a pretty thin knife, so in my experience, thin knives do have a little bit harder time. They don't have the weight behind them to really push through carrots, or they've got to be laser sharp. This is pretty dang sharp, but it wasn't quite sharp enough to shave that carrot. Still, no problem chopping up that carrot, doing the fancy brunoise. No big deal, but I do think I could get it a little sharper. That's probably on me as a sharpener. The onion, lasered through it. Didn't quite get the cleanest cut there at the end on the horizontal cut, but overall, I'm really happy with it. And you're going to see right here, I'm breaking down a ton of vegetables, tons of onions, carrots, celery, all to go into various meals that I'm making for my sister and her husband to enjoy, take some strain off them while they deal with having a kid. The rest of this video is going to be me and times 10 doing prep work. I wanted to do this because I needed to do it, but also in a lot of knife reviews out there, they talk about the specs of the knife. They talk about, they do some out of the box cutting tests, things like that, right? I've had this knife for over a year. This is my second or third time sharpening it, and I want you to see how well it holds up. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I use this knife a lot. I don't just have it to look cool. I use it, and I do really enjoy it. So if you're thinking about getting this knife, you're having thoughts about it, I want you to be able to use this as a resource. All in all, I made 3 pretty heavy prep intensive dishes. Tomato basil soup, chili, and bolognese sauce. All of them requiring a lot of cutting, a lot of chopping, onions, carrots, celery, the usual suspects, right? And I have to say, I did just sharpen the knife, but it performed awesome, right? No problems. Lasered through pretty much all the vegetables, no wedging. And it makes doing this work a joy, right? Having a sharp knife is incredibly important to me. I enjoy using it. It's part of what makes cooking fun to me. So I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. Feel free to skip around. Not going to hurt my feelings if you don't watch the whole thing. Honestly, if you're still watching here, 20 minutes in, you're a trooper, and I appreciate you. If you guys want to see more content like this, let me know in the comments. Please like, subscribe, comment. All that stuff helps the channel grow, helps me come up with new ideas. All that stuff helps the channel grow. I'm having a good time. Hope you guys enjoy watching this video. We'll see you next time. Ooh, I have been working out. Back in its place of honor.